thank you so much for taking the time to join us on Seekers to Success. So my name is Oletilwe Mogashoa, and I'm the founder as well as executive producer of Seekers to Success. This is our second webinar, and today it excites me because we have a powerful woman whom we'll be interviewing, Ipeleng Mkhari, on the topic Build to Last.
Everybody is really, I think, wondering and pondering about their own life. So that is no different for myself. And I really hope that today we can converse and just speak authentically and openly about the things that are challenging us, because it's Mkhari. I was born and raised in Durban. I'm very much an Italian. And I came to Johannesburg to really start working about 22 years ago. My journey has been one of a lot of challenge, a lot of tribulations, but also a lot of joy. And I think I want to just take you back to the beginning of my journey when I started this career of mine in 1998. So one of the things, the start of it, is that I started very much not knowing what I was going to do. I studied a Bachelor of Social Sciences degree. I left Natal. I had just lost one of my parents at the end of that year, 1996. And so the beginning of 97 was a year of huge pain, huge adversity, huge questioning of my life and what I was going to do. I was very, very young, obviously, in my early 20s, and I was called Posa'iliso CCTV, which is essentially a little business that I was recruited into. I worked for a particular organization, a family-owned business in Natal, that needed a Black woman, individual, to start and try and lead that. 1997, which is this time when this all happened, it's 3 years post our democracy. I'm some 22-year-old child, individual, a young adult. I know nothing about BEE. And I venture into this particular company to really just open up particularly being a girl from KwaZulu-Natal. And I spent an entire year with this particular company called Posa'iliso CCTV. My journey has been one in the last 22 years of finding many moments in my life, Ole, where I have had this big challenge. And I'm not going to talk about all the significant challenges in my intro because I would like to leave some for later. But I think what Posa'iliso taught me when I started is I became a front in an organization that I didn't even understand. I became that actually I'm working for a family-owned business, and my two other co-directors are a gardener and a housekeeper. And that threw me into such a spin around integrity and what I wanted to do for my life. So I've spent the entire time since then, really 22 years, I focus on a couple of things, and I maybe just want to touch on them. Self-belief, self-power, and self-love. And that has been a really, really important part of my journey, just knowing that you are enough. So today we run a business that is just an investment holdings company. We have about 400 staff. We operate in 3 different countries. South Africa, we invest in property, and we manage other people's property. And I'm a very proud mom of 3 girls, and I'm a wife. And I think that's enough in terms of my intro.
Thank you so much. Wow, that was so powerful. I love your authenticity. I love the way you just put your heart on the floor, because I think we can all learn from that. The reason why I asked you is because I've had the privilege of seeing you in action, and truly just you had us like at the palm of your hand, literally, when you shared your story. Because at times we see the frills, we see you as this wonderful, successful, glamorous. We don't realize that you've had some hard times, you've had to endure a lot of hardships, specifically within business, Ipeleng. And I think for me, Built to Last was who wants to embark on entrepreneurship, or who wants to actually cement themselves within Africa. We are in COVID-19. It's very tough to find right now. There's a lot of people who say, please help me, I've just been retrenched, or I've started a business, or just a lot of people losing their jobs. And I guess my hope and my prayer for our session was for people today has gone through some certain adversities, etc., then I can too overcome. So you've touched a bit about your challenges. How did you then get yourself out of
thanks, Ole. I think that there's something that I have a really that is just your own sense of self. The moments when I've had my greatest failure, or when I felt like I don't know who I am. When I lost my mom when I was in my last year of university, she was everything to me. I'm the eldest of 3 girls at home, and I was the first person now who she had raised who had just finished her degree, and she never got to see me actually give a lesson around, sure, loss is a big thing, but there's one thing about failure or loss, Ole, that it gives you an opportunity to really dig deeply within. So I talk about adversity as a going. I don't know how many of you have experienced loss, who've lost things, lost loved ones, who failed, who started up businesses, lost friendships. They're actually a propeller. It's not a definition of who you are. It's not the end of the world. So for me, every time I've had that moment where I've said, hang on, what's going on here? I've used, and so one of the things that I realize is that when you're in the darkest moment, you have to be in that moment, first of all. So there's no opportunity to deny it. There's no opportunity to say it's not here. There is. The second thing that I've learned about myself is that I've got a very thick skin. I've built it over the years. I was raised as a very quiet young girl. I became confident as I grew up. And I think that what I've learned to realize is that I don't owe you anything. And in fact, one of the things that you need to do is to own your pain a lot of the time. Own it, live with it, live through it. Let it be that propeller. Let it be that opportunity for you to discover the things that you need to discover in those moments. So my mom not being there actually propelled, okay, here's this lady, she's left me. She was pretty much the person who had raised us. And when I then started working at Posaiso, I realized, hang on, I'm a front here. I'm 22 years old. I'm running around. My partners are a housekeeper and a gardener. Security is important. I left that company. When I left that company, I said to the owner of the business, give me this business. I would like to take it over. I'd like for it to be registered in my name, and I will take it on. And he said to me, Ipeleng, you will never become anything. You will not be able to succeed in CCTV. And I said, it's okay, but I'd rather try. I'd rather at least. So those 2 moments of adversity in the space of a year to 2 years, it was quite hectic for me. But I think the things that helped, and I don't know what the age group is of our group that's listening today. I'm now over 40. I'm closer to the other side. What I'm realizing, Ole, is that when you're young, you really need to believe in yourself. When you're young, you really need to be able to own your issues, own your pain, live through it. And I say that because in my early days, the things that helped me, I suppose, to declutter and not to be too taken over by the situation was that Ipeleng. And so I was lucky. I was lucky with that. So I really want to say, just before I got onto this call, I got a call from quite a senior individual in a business, a large corporate that is actually unbundling. It's literally, they're starting from scratch. In fact, they're not even unbundling, they're starting from scratch. They're closing businesses. It was a call from someone saying, I need a job. Do you have a job for me? Exactly what you've just said. And people are in the most difficult moment right now. And I think the one thing that I want to say to you, Ole, and to a lot of young individuals out there, young and old, is that this is not the end. This is actually the beginning. This is actually a moment of adversity where you have the opportunity to lost. You actually have the opportunity to start saying, what can I let go of? And let me give an analogy of that. So companies today, as we speak, are actually acknowledging that everything they had has actually just disappeared. It's dissipated. So I'm in the process, have actually either lost the value of those assets because the tenants obviously can't pay or whatever is happening in the market, or they can't keep up the debt repayments for those assets. Therefore, they know they're going to lose them. What is the option that you have today, whether you're a leader of an organization or you're the leader of your home or you're the leader of your life? What do I not need? And that is the first thing that people do with their businesses. In a business, someone will say, hang on, I now no longer have the ground to stand on. How do I get rid of things that I don't need so that I don't burden myself? That is exactly what we should be doing as individuals. We shouldn't be wallowing in the challenge of really about saying, how do I let go of those things? And there's been a lot of talk in the last couple of weeks and months around people realizing that things mean nothing. Things that we own truly mean nothing. They are fickle. The most important thing that we have actually is
so
our
powerful.
health.
Like I was scribbling as you're writing, and there's so many things that stood out to me, especially around owning your pain. I think a lot of people can relate to that in their personal capacity. Even before COVID, whatever pain that you go through, I think a lot of people, and I myself included, is that sometimes focus your energy on something else and get distracted. But until you actually deal with that pain and unpack it and own it and then move forward, that's the only way in which you can propel yourself.
Absolutely.
So I think that was very, very insightful. I also picked on something that you actually touched on when you were starting early in your career, and you realized when you wanted to start your own career and someone tells you that it's impossible, you can't do it. How does one start silencing that voice of others, right? There's I always say that the voice of God needs to be louder than the voice of others. And I believe in God and whomever who's on the session, whoever the higher power may be for you. But for me, that's what centers me. So how does self-love, self-power, and self-belief to say, I will get through and I will propel in my career, I will do well in my business, no matter what everything around me may be suggesting or saying or not. How does one?
And I'm so grateful you just said that. How does one get to that point? So Ole, I have to be honest with you and say to you that in my late 20s, when I started my business, and in my early 30s, in fact, 20s to, let's say, the end of my 30s. Success was something that was just kind of all around us. We were being geared for success all the time as young business people. We were constantly being profiled, constantly being told, particularly women, Black women, you know, stand out there, go out there, do these things. There are opportunities for you. Now, it's interesting, the question that you ask around, how do you actually get to a point where you constantly remind yourself that you are powerful beyond measure, you can achieve, you are worthy, you are enough. For me, in my early days, it wasn't something that I thought of. And it's a crazy thing that I reflected on a few years ago. I went through a very, very difficult business period between 2013, I would say, and 2016. We had just listed a property fund in 2012, so that's a great moment, right? A fantastic moment. And I thought, wow, I'm on top of the world, I'm doing amazing things. And a year later, I realized that actually my business partner and I were completely misaligned. We had started the business together, and we had built a brilliant business. And I realized that, in fact, our value systems were no longer aligned. I went through a very difficult business divorce. It was so difficult that it took my entire mind and focus away from my business. And during that time, I lost a lot. I lost myself. I found myself depressed. I found myself lonely, tired, angry, upset at the fact that I had become so used to knowing that, hang on, you do something, you touch something, it works. And I hadn't learned what it actually meant to not actually succeed in anything. And I remember sitting in about 2016 after we'd lost a massive contract in one of our businesses. And I sat and I had breakfast with a friend. And I said to her, how do you do it? How do you do it? You've gone through difficult things. You've got a very public life. And yet you're rising. I can see you're rising. I know you went through difficulty, but I can see. And she said, Ipeleng, I'd like to suggest that you get this book. And it's a simple book, little thin book by a guy called Joseph Murphy. And it's called The Power of the Subconscious Mind. We all have this thing, Ole. And nobody actually teaches you how to remind yourself that you are brilliant. It's all here already. It's about the switch that you choose to switch on. It's about the thoughts that you choose to place in your mind. And I can tell you now that it might not make sense to you. Certainly, if someone had told me this when I was 25 or 35, I would have said, look, you know what? I'm having a great time and my life is quite good and I know what I'm doing. The challenge is there comes a point in your life where you actually begin to realize that there's a metaphysical thing going on. So everything that we think, you are what you think you are. You actually are what you think you are. You believe whatever it is that you believe, you shall actually reap and you shall live.
Wow.
So it is a strange and crazy thing. But in that moment of adversity in 2016, I remember feeling so low and saying to my husband at the time, I just feel like I don't want anything. I don't want to run this business. I just want to sit at home and do nothing. And reading that book by Joseph Murphy reminded me about the power of my mind. Since then, all I've done for the last 4 years is read the right books, fill my mind with the right information, fill my life with the right people, cut out negative things, and speak truth and positivity to my life. Be honest about the pain. Talk about the pain. Share the pain. Because when you hold on to it, or when you hold on to the fear that I will not succeed, when you keep it within yourself and you try to logicize it or make it kind of manage it in your brain, you will never live it. You will never conquer it. And so I really, really want to say that there's no magic trick. It's you. It's actually all within you. It really is within you. And so everything that I try and do now, whether it's talking to my kids, talking to my teams, even when we've got challenges, guys, what is our goal? Ole, what is your goal? You want to achieve this? You can achieve it. It is possible. Now start filling your mind with the positive information, the affirmation, the reminders, the acknowledgement that it is possible. all too often, the people who remind you about how sick they are actually are sick. The people who talk about, I'm so tired and exhausted, I'm so busy, I feel like I'm going to get sick. You eventually do get sick. And that's just life. And it's a thing that you bring into your life. And it's a metaphysical state. So, I can't share more than that. That's what it is. And I would urge all of you to do that and read that book. It will take you literally 1 day, if not 2 days, to read it.
Thank you so much. So it's the power of the subconscious mind, you said.
The power of the subconscious mind, that thing at the back there, constantly telling you things. What you feed it is what it is.
That's so powerful, Ipeleng, and I truly can attest to what you're saying, is that you need to start reaffirming yourself and speaking positive, words, and just speaking life into your life, right? And I like what you said about finding the right people. I struggled with that when I was starting in my career, finding the right tribe, surrounding yourself with strong, powerful, influential individuals who will be with you in every season of your life, not just the bad or the good, but in all seasons.
Absolutely.
I like what you said. And really what stood out to me is you are what you think you are, and you shall reap, and
you shall.
Yeah. It's so powerful. And I think at this moment, I just want to pause a bit, because I'm also getting messages, and I just want to just share
I saw them.
Yes, that you can start sending all your questions. And I'm just going to see, Maru, if I can ask you to please assist me if you can see any questions yet.
So Ole, I want to just recognize there are 2 people who've read this book, and I'm so grateful for that, because the Black child, the African child, has often been told that they are nothing. And the one thing that I learned about the power of the subconscious mind is that there is something that we can do to help our children in how they think about themselves. And it's about what we tell them, right? It's about affirmation. So when you affirm a child every single day, when you remind a child of their brilliance and their power, you are setting a foundation about their thought process. You're setting patterns in their life, in their mind, particularly about how they think about themselves. It is such an important thing about the language that we use with our children. You may not need to be a parent. The language that you use with your young people around you is so important. And so information about who you are and what you fill it with, when you fill up a child with the knowledge that they are useless or you're not good at that, they will actually believe it. They will truly believe it. And I've seen it. I've got 3 girls. My youngest daughter very recently felt very overwhelmed with a particular problem she had. And it was a simple issue. And I said to her, but you are able to do this. Do you realize how simple this thing is? And when we walked through the process of her own understanding, she was overwhelmed with emotion, saying, Mommy, I can do it. And it's just one of those amazing things that you switch your child from just saying things like, I can't, I won't, I don't, I'm not good, to you are brilliant. And it's not about audacity or being arrogant. It's about confidence and self-knowledge and self-love. So that's really the cornerstone of that book. So I saw other questions about what books am I reading. I'm sure we're going to come to the questions, but I have a whole pile. Can you see the books here? There are a whole lot. I brought them from my room the other day. I've been cleaning up because of COVID. The study looked shocking before, and it was my staff, my housekeeper, and were saying, "Sis, this room was a storage room. Now it's a proper study." So there are lots of amazing books that I've read, and some of them are quite amazing. I recently read a book by a friend of mine, Tabi Daukubong, and it's called The Interior Design. In fact, I'm sure it's somewhere behind me. Brilliant book, and really, really loved it. Simple book. Loved it because it's just about a person that I know. Recently started Michelle Obama's book. My goodness, I then bought the CDs because I thought I'm loving the book, but I need to get through it quicker. I'm still reading Becoming. Recently read, I loved Iman's book when I read it at the time. So there are lots of different books. In fact, it's funny, I'm reading out my own, I'm listening to myself, and I'm realizing that a lot of the books I read are actually, authored by Black women. So there's a whole lot of books that I'm loving. One of the books I read in 2016, funny enough, when I shared with you that I had a very difficult time and I was feeling very low, and actually I think I was actually depressed. I never actually got clinically told that I was depressed. But the book that I read was an amazing book about sleep. Now I'm trying to remember the woman. I'll remember her name just now, Ole. She's an international businesswoman. And the specific book for me was important because at that time I couldn't sleep. I actually couldn't sleep. And I think her name is it Ariana Huffington? She ran the Huffington Post. And you know, I remember thinking, what's going on in my life? Am I so stressed that I can't even have a good night's sleep? And so I loved that book. Got through it so quickly. And at that time, I remember I was also reading Sheryl Sandberg's book as well. So called Lean In. So yeah, I mean, lots and lots of books that I could share and talk about.
Perfect. What I will suggest is that maybe at the end, when I share the recording with everyone else, I'll also put a list of books, because I think,
sure.
you know,
Absolutely.
that's so important, that we need to truly plant our minds. And it brings me to a quote by Benjamin Franklin that I absolutely love, that says, an investment in knowledge pays the best interest. And we constantly need to just, you know, fuel ourselves and our minds all the time in order to shape our future. So I think I'm just going to go into some of the questions, because I don't want to miss people's questions out. So
okay.
I see the first one by Attacq. Attacq says, you are hardworking, making all the right strides. How do you get a manager not to book books as a BFF face? Tip on how to play the game. Sorry, I'm not sure if I'm understanding. Hopefully you got the crux of the question, but she says, let me read it again.
Not really.
Okay, so she says, you're hardworking. I'm assuming she's saying herself, and she's making all the right strides. How does she get a manager not to, I don't know what this means, not to book as a BFF face? Okay, basically tip on how to play the game if you have a manager that is controlling, micromanaging. I think that's the crux of what I'm getting.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. That's a very challenging one. I think it's an interesting one because first of all, it's Kagiso, you said, right? I think that one of the things around, you know, reporting to an individual who's a very controlling individual, is a controlling person, is really recognizing your own security and that person's insecurities. And so self-awareness is a very important trait, I think, as people, as human beings, because we live and work with people who are often threatened by you, and sometimes threatened by someone who's maybe more knowledgeable than them or not. I have found in my experience what has helped, and often I've been the manager, so I've not necessarily been the person reporting to a manager. What I found that has helped in my leadership capacity is to be able to assess and identify those particular challenges in a team, in a group of people, amongst two people. Just this morning, I had a very interesting challenge where I think I set up a meeting between two of my colleagues, and going into it, I requested them to acknowledge exactly what their concerns were and what their issues were. I also had to say, and I think this is something that you could use as your own tip, you know, somebody who is bullying you may be very difficult for you to address that issue in terms of from an assertive point of view. What you need to be able to do is to outline what the concerns are, maybe even get a third party to try and actually sit down with you to address those concerns and those issues. What I did this morning specifically was I had to say to the individual who had reached out to me that you need to acknowledge that a bully has got particular traits. So you need to disarm them. And often disarming is about owning your own insecurities. Wow. I have a problem and I'm concerned about the behavior when you do this. This is how it makes me feel, or this is the outcome that it brings. So disarming somebody does not necessarily mean that you need to necessarily become weak in the moment, but it's actually making them realize that your actions actually have a very counter productive output or outcome in my life. And these are the specific things that I will pose and put on the table that kind of demonstrate that. And what it does, I think, is bullies are often people who don't expect to be presented with information, facts. They're often very emotive. And I think when you step away from that emotive kind of behavior, I don't know your situation, Katlego, it allows you to be factual and to deal with that person in that particular way. And I would suggest, obviously, that it does help if you have a third party. I don't know the situation, but that would be my simple advice, not knowing enough about the story.
Thank you so much, Ipeleng. Let me move on to, I think, Natasha. Tash. I call it Tash, sorry. Please provide practical business examples or advice on how one can scale a new but operating business.
It's new, but it's operating.
And
that's interesting. So you want to scale it. It depends on what sector the business in. I think there are some very easy ways to scale a business. And I think, you know, some of the things that I have, I think that have worked is, depending on what industry the business is in, it's often quite important these days to look at collaboration and partnerships in your ability to actually scale what you do, whether it's a service business or manufacturing. I'm not sure what it is, but particularly in the service industry, collaboration and partnerships offer a huge opportunity for people to scale what they're doing just through the partnership of others. Certainly, I think that the other interesting thing also in a service environment is, I think, the use of digital technology. I think that is a huge area. That's certainly an area that we're trying to look at as a business. So we have a business that operates, as I said, Ole, in 3 different sectors or 3 different markets or countries. And to try and scale that business overnight is quite hard because it's quite labor intensive. So the only way that we are seeing that we'll be able to do that is to start to create the right platforms behind the scenes that give us scale. My apologies, sorry, on a digital platform that we will create ourselves that reach a far broader market and far more channels to market. So I would suggest that those two ideas may assist you in actually being able to scale your business.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So I'm going to take another 3, and then I'm going to pose one question that I just thought of, but I'm going to try to get through as many questions as possible. So Amahle has said, when feeling stuck personally or professionally, how do you ascertain it? Isn't your impatience pushing you to let go versus it really be time to move forward and redefine a new path? So when you're feeling stuck personally or professionally, how do you ascertain if it isn't your impatience pushing you
Okay.
versus it really being time to move forward and redefine a new path? And if I could also add to that, because it actually follows to what I wrote, is if, you know, sometimes I think us as millennials, and I'm going to put myself in that bracket because I'm still a millennial, I am a millennial, but I think we've often been, you know, accused of not having a lot of patience, not having a lot of, you know, you want it now, instant gratification. And I think we see things differently, which can also add value to an organization. But I think I've also suffered with this personally in knowing when it's the right time to leave. So you mentioned Sheryl Sandberg in Lean In. There's a chapter that, you know, she puts on, don't leave before you leave. And that was around women, you know, who often feel like, you know, I've started a family, I've got 2 or 3 kids, and, you know, I'm not gonna put up my hand for certain positions, you know. So yeah, I guess that's what I'm getting from Amahle's question as well. You know, when do you know?
What I'm getting from her question, Ole, is particularly as a young, I'm assuming she's probably also young, single, out there. It doesn't really matter whether she is or not, but what I think she's saying is, when do you know that actually you're not being impatient, you actually do need to get up and go now, it's time? It's a very difficult one. You know, and I'm gonna start off by saying that I'm a very patient person, and one of the things that has got me, I think, to appreciate where I am today, has been, I suppose, allowing myself to not rush. Okay, that is not, though, necessarily me saying to you, do not move quickly with the things that you're trying to achieve. And I would agree. I think there is a misconception and a misunderstanding by someone like myself of a younger generation, and the need to get moving, the need to achieve. So one of the things that I acknowledge is that young people are going to achieve so much more, so much quicker than we ever did, way more. That it's apparent already in life. It's apparent all around us. Young people are less afraid, and therefore more ready to jump, take risks, take the opportunities, and you should never fear that. I think I said it when I started. When I was younger, that was a time where really I was a lot more naive, but also nothing. I feared nothing. And so, to come to the question, when do you kind of know that? I think when you find yourself stuck is when you know that, what, I'm doing this every day, but I have no passion in it anymore. I don't really feel like I'm giving and I'm getting what I would want any longer. And I think when that moment comes, it is important for you to be able to really look within yourself and ask yourself, what are the things that I can do? Could I do more in this job? Could I do more in terms of take on more opportunity, give of myself more, take on more responsibility? Or would that just be hiding and actually closing off the reality that it's time to move on? And I think, I know I've got a lot of people in my life who've kind of shared with me and said, I'm now, it's enough. I've had enough. And not because I don't like what I do, or not because I haven't achieved, but because I've reached that ceiling. So it's a very personal thing for different people. But I think that when the passion dies, I don't think that there's anything more painful than getting up in the morning for something you really don't want to do. A paycheck at the end of the month cannot be good enough for a passionless, purposeless kind of life or existence, and sometimes jobs become that. They just become just that. No, and you would be able to assess that personally.
Thank you so much, Ipeleng. And then Gladness would also like to know, she says, a lot of what you're saying reminds me of the famous words by Winston Churchill that says, never let a good crisis go to waste.
Oh, yes.
Do you have practical pointers to assist us in navigating through the current adversity in order to propel ourselves in a bright post-COVID future? Beautiful question.
I love that question. I think one of the things that I shared earlier, and I want to maybe expand on it now, is business people. And I'm going to talk about business people because I am one. When you start something, Ole, or when you buy something, let's talk about things that are really important to us. You buy a home, you buy a car, you start a business. A lot of what this crisis is telling us, and that wonderful quote from Winston Churchill, is that you actually have the opportunity to rewrite it all. You have this opportunity to start afresh. You have the opportunity to write it all down and say what matters and what doesn't, and to never be afraid to do that. And I think what I would say to every single person in this call right now, in this session, don't have the fear to hang on to the things that actually haven't been bringing you value all this time. It could be actually that when you assess your business and where it is, there's an opportunity right now to say, could I start afresh and what would it mean? And am I so scared to do it? Let me do it. Let me just start afresh. Now, obviously, it's not that simple to do. It takes a lot of thought, thinking, planning. But one of the things that I think the COVID crisis has presented is that life was not the way it was yesterday.
Yeah.
And that was not of your doing, but it has happened. And it is now something that you must live with and deal with. Are you going to live with what you had yesterday, yet today is completely different? So take the opportunity now, and don't waste a good crisis. Take the opportunity to reassess it all. Reassess your job, reassess your home, assess the things that you own that maybe you don't need. Throw out those clothes, get rid of them. Let go of those things that actually potentially are holding you back. And I think it's not a difficult one, because I'm not necessarily saying that everything in your life is not great. So I gave an example of this call I got earlier, and I was struck by the feedback that here's a company I know, and the directors have taken a decision to start afresh because what they have is no longer worth what they were building it for. And it's a bold decision. It has major consequences, because there are people who will be affected by that decision, whether they agree with it or not, or whether they made the decision or not. But those of us who have the ability to make the decision in our own lives about the things that are there that matter, that we control, this is the opportunity to do it. And I think a lot of businesses are going to be doing that, good people. A lot of employers, owners of businesses, large corporates, are making decisions now about what matters to them. Because they can. Because the crisis has presented a completely different paradigm. The lens through which they're looking through is completely different. And so should yours. And so I think that's the opportunity. And I think be smart in it. Be very smart in how you do it. It is a volatile time. And I think when I say be smart, I am saying don't go rush out and do things. I'm not suggesting that you go now and, resign from your jobs. But I am saying be cautious and start looking at all things differently.
Thank you so much, Ipeleng. I wrote so many. I mean, what's powerful is that you're saying you have the opportunity to write all, and we need to let go of things that are no longer serving us and take opportunities that are currently there. So that's quite profound and very powerful. And I think, before I go to the next question, I always talk about myself as a brand. Like we work for certain companies. You may have, one has their own company, but how do you ensure, like COVID has taught us that we need to be nimble and very flexible and very agile, right? So how does one, ensure that they've got such a strong brand that if a corporate is thinking of retrenchments or, that they think of you, that they do not, you're not on the first on the line. How do you set yourself apart from all, everyone else within the organization? I guess, that's what I wanted to ask you.
A very difficult one. But I think some of the commonalities that I think are true anyway. Excellence matters. So, excellence is not something that is necessarily cyclical. It should be consistent. And so when people want to make decisions about who do we keep and who do we not keep, usually it's about the value that is attached to that brand. It's about the value that is attached to that human being. So when you talk about yourself as a brand, I think you're quite correct. When people think brand Ole, what do they think? Do they think of somebody who they think, well, actually, even if we keep her, what is the value that will be attained? Or are they thinking, wow, absolutely, there's no way we're letting go of Oletilwe. We need to be able to keep her because of these values and these things that just are so aligned to our business. It's difficult now, but we can work with an Ole brand. So it's excellence really does matter. Excellence, though, Ole, is not going to necessarily negate a complete pivot of a company. A complete pivot might just mean that we all start afresh. So it's a very scary time, I think, for many people. And I think there's an additional opportunity that we have. So, you know, there may be conversations, and there must be conversations happening all over in all of our spaces. I can tell you that I've had those conversations in my own organization, where my team has pushed back and at times said, okay, yes, we agree. And there've been situations where we've had to, in the last 2 months, say, okay, actually, unfortunately, we are now digitizing this part of our business. That means that this is the impact it'll have. And that's a very, very real issue. The opportunity that we may have as professionals and as young people, because I think that's what a lot of the audience here today is to also start pivoting. So there's opportunity where you are, right? So there's a box where you are, and that's where what you're doing. And there's conversation happening, and there may be an opportunity or not. You may stay, you may not be able to stay. But there is nothing that stops you from beginning to assess, if I were not here, where would I be?
Yeah.
And that's a scary thing to come to terms with, but it's something what you need to start looking at. To start saying, well, actually, I really like that company next door. Maybe I'll just touch base with those individuals and those people and just put myself out there. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's important that we actually all realize that there are things that are going to potentially happen. And then lastly, Ole, you may actually stay. You may be the one that stays for now. So consistently being able to reimagine and kind of reassess is really important. So I will just leave that, because this is a crisis right now.
No, you're right. You're so right, Ipeleng. Now, I'm very cognizant of time as well. It seems like we've got 10 minutes. I am going to try on my side. I'm leaning on Maru to see if he can extend it. I've been sending him messages to see if we can extend it. Because a session like this is truly just phenomenal. And I'm sure people are just like, really soaking in all the wisdom from you, Ipeleng. So I'm going to try to take as many questions as possible. But if I see that we've got 5 minutes or 3 minutes to go, I'm going to have to cut it there and then just
no problem.
Give us your closing remarks. Okay, so Alicia asks, my question for Ipeleng is, in order to withstand all the trials and tribulations along your journey, how valuable have your professional networks been?
Oh, immensely valuable. In fact, I think that my in many respects, my professional networks have really grounded, not just my business, but my personal interactions. And I think, I just want to say, I think that, in today's world, who you are at home and who you are in business, pretty much the same thing. I found certainly, and I think we've got to acknowledge that the more that we're living in a social media world, and a world that is so quick and so fast and driven by just constant images and constant information in our faces, the person who's my professional acquaintance essentially should not see a completely different person to the person who I might sit with personally, as a friend. And I think these things are one and the same thing, pretty much. So I am who I am now. I'm the same person in a professional environment, and I think the moment we believe or think that there's a major division between who I am at work and how I am at home, I think you'll realize that actually it's not quite actually the reality. And there are many examples. There's so many examples to kind of demonstrate that. So, and life, I think we can't afford as people to assume that you can be one person behind closed doors and another at the office. That's not quite how life works, actually. So your professional relationships really become a really big cornerstone, because they transcend that kind of personal all the time.
No, thank you. And then Amanda has said, Earlier you mentioned declutter. Can you share what ways or process you have followed in doing this exercise? I'm a person who has many dreams and goals, and at times I'm not focused because I'm touching on everything.
Yeah. I tend to be that kind of person as well, by the way, Amanda. Is it Amanda?
Yes, Amanda.
I tend to try to do a lot of different things. So I'm a Virgo, and I believe very strongly in star signs. I'm a perfectionist, and everything must be perfect all the time. But one of the things that I find is a challenge for me is that I could have a couple of very big projects on the go. And I'm not just talking business projects, you know, it could be a project about something in the home, could be a child, something that's happening. And I think that's a big problem. It's a challenge in terms of the ability to declutter and just to keep it simple. It also is a signal that I think, you know, you obviously are very able to do a lot, but I think that, you know, the challenge with trying to do too much at once is that you're distracted, and you need to be able to focus on specific things to get through them. So what advice would I give in terms of decluttering? Sure. Look, I would say keep it simple. Try and keep it simple all the time. I certainly try now to you know, every single day in my life. I'm a person who loves writing. I have notes, sticky notes everywhere. Try and keep to a set of specific things that you need to be able to do. Because decluttering is not something that's a big thing that happens once. It's a constant way of thinking and being, I suppose. Try and stick to a specific set of things. Keep it short, keep it simple. Tick off. I don't know how you guys feel, but when I've got a list of 10 things that I must do, you know, when I tick off I actually feel the stress kind of coming off my shoulders, like, wow, I've done it. And that's part of decluttering. Another very simple thing that I've tried to do is sleep early. Okay, it's very important. I try and make sure that I sleep by 10:30 every night, because my brain needs to actually rest. You actually need to switch off. And sleeping allows you, you know, to not actually be thinking a lot. The other thing that has cluttered our lives a lot is social media. So I mean, I say to my kids, especially now online, it's funny, you know, now that we are and working online, studying online, school online, I found that our children are constantly on any device. It's a laptop, it's an iPad, it's a phone. And what's happening is that some kids will sleep very early because they're used to it and their body just works that way. But I also have a daughter of mine who could sleep literally at 2 a.m. every day. And if I don't assist this child to actually say, no, the phone, I now at 6 o'clock or whatever time, 5, thank you, mommy takes that, you finish school. You're actually teaching that child to let go of these things and get the clutter out of her life. And for a child, and even for me, I find that if I've given myself the time, I must sleep at 10:30. At 10 o'clock, I must be in that bedroom area, and I'm now reading. I'm now slowing my mind down. I'm having a cup of some chamomile tea. Simple things like that help me, excuse me, in my daily kind of focus of kind of less, because less really is more, I think.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So we literally have 3 minutes, and I do want you to just give us closing remarks. I'm going to take 2 more questions. Tash, I see you sent another question. I'm not going to read your question just for fairness so that I can give other people a chance. So I see that there's 2. Okay. There's a lot of questions, Ipeleng, by the way.
Sure.
So
No, fair enough.
Everybody, if I haven't gotten through to your questions, but you know, we get so soaked into the conversation and we can't possibly go through all of them. But I'm going to just 2 at a go, Ipeleng, and then if you can answer both of them and then give us your closing remarks. I am just very cautious of time, and I just don't want us to be cut off abruptly. So I think this is from Tatum. They've said, you mentioned surrounding yourself with people who are aligned to what and where you would like to be, or those that speak to where you would like to go. Would you recommend mentoring or coaching as a first step? I ask because not everyone has access to those people otherwise. So that's from Tatum. The second one, from K. Mkhorosi. I would like to talk about assertiveness. What has helped you to remain steady in your truth, the truth, and a strong sense of integrity? And then if you can give us the closing remarks after those two questions.
So can I just get the first one? I know the one, I got the one, what has helped me to remain assertiveness and what has helped me to remain truthful and in my own truth. This is the first one.
And then the other one is basically, you know, she said you mentioned surrounding yourself with people who align to you and your goal. Would you recommend mentoring or coaching as a first step? She asked,
I see.
Yes, because not everyone has access to people.
I see. So she's wanting to be a mentor. Would I recommend it?
I think, would you recommend mentoring or coaching as a first step? I don't know. It could be either or. I think she's trying to surround herself with like-minded people, and she's saying, you know, would she? I'm interpreting it as if he or she is saying, would you recommend she or he gets a mentor or get some form of coaching as a first step?
Got it. Let me start with that one then. Absolutely. I would actually, I would probably recommend a mentor. I think a coach is great, and a coach is a little bit more structured, I think, in terms of business goals. And I suppose it does depend on what your objective is in terms of surrounding yourself with positive and strong people. Is it in your personal life, or is it necessarily in your career? But I would certainly support mentoring. It's something that I've done for years, and something that I've tried to do in our property industry as well is really encourage young women to be able to surround yourself with really strong people and people who've done different things from you. You know, we've established things like mentoring through Women's Property Network, certainly, and that has helped us to, one, attract great women, great young women, and I think, two, give them that exposure to other women who've done it. And I think that it's a great tool that women certainly can use. I find that women also are very, very open to that kind of mentoring relationship. And I think we understand, whilst we're very competitive, we also have got a very strong compassion, you know, to be able to support one another. So I would certainly suggest that. And that gives you a circle of people that certainly, you know, has other circles, and that's how these things extend. Excuse me. The question around assertiveness and how do you stay true? Sure, I think it's about, so assertiveness for me is one thing. Staying true is about self, and I suppose recognizing those things and those moments where, you know yourself best. Self-knowledge is very important. And I think that to stay true to yourself and to stay true, even in the most difficult situations that could be challenging your value system, challenging you just as a person, you know, you talk about assertiveness. So I assume that you must be an assertive person, that the question is coming from, I'm supposing, that angle. And I think that you've got to be able to, it sounds silly, but you've got to just be who you are. You know, it's such a funny thing that often people, you know, certainly in this Joburg environment, or this very fast urban world, I think often people believe that they've got to be something they're not in order to get ahead or to attract the right people around them or whatever. And I think staying true for me has just been being true to myself. When I'm low, when I'm happy, I am, when I've lost, and acknowledging it. And I think you will never know who you are until you're tested. And I think that overcoming tests is very important in being able to being true to yourself.
Powerful. Thank you so much, Ipeleng. I've certainly learned a lot, and I wish that this session could go on and on and on. We'll certainly be having you back.
Thank you. Thank you, Ole.
I think we've learned so much from you, Ipeleng, and again, thank you for availing yourself in the time. And, you know, it took just soaked in all your knowledge and wisdom on the topic of build to last. You are certainly someone I look up to, and I draw strength from you. And we are just, celebrating you, celebrating your success, and we thank you for your time. So just, in closing, if you can just share some, closing remarks. And then I just wanted to say to people that for more sessions, please do go to www.success.live, where we will be hosting similar sessions and webinars. So over to you, Ipeleng.
So I have, two little things that I want to share, because I think I have the audience of some, the future of our country. And it's so important for me that, one of the things I said to Ole about this conversation is I'm at the time and space in my life where I'm realizing that everyone's calling me OC and CC. So clearly I'm much older now. And, it brings, absolutely. I'm only joking with you. It brings a sense of, I'm transitioning to a time and a place where the intergenerational conversation is so important for me. I've done things a certain way. You guys see me and you think, wow, Ipeleng has done and achieved so much. I just want to say to you guys, you are brilliant beyond measure. You are powerful beyond your own recognition, but you will only live it and know it when you believe it. And this message I say wholeheartedly, because when I was your age, I told you earlier that I didn't really think about thoughts on my life and this is what I do, but it truly is, it's a real thing. And so I want you to, I hope you can drink that every day. I hope you can learn and know that every day, that the more you're pumping this powerful, positive energy in your life, you're going to go through challenges, but you're going to constantly dream and live in a particular way. And I think my last message to you guys as leaders, so that's how I see you. I see you as leaders. I see you as the future. I'd like to just share that, I believe that excellence, ethics, and empathy are so important in leadership. Excellence, ethics, and empathy are really important in leadership. And the balance that of that for me on the other scale. So it's critical for us to be excellent and ethical, but on the other scale, humanity, compassion, and courage are as important. And I think I really think it's so important for young South African leaders who are African leaders and who will be global leaders to understand that. And the more we live in that way, I really hope, Ole, that, the cis Ipelengs of this world, I've learned so much from so many other men and women who've lived like that. I draw from them in the same way that you might draw from me. And I just want to leave you with that, that please, let's live our lives excellently and ethically and with empathy. Because I think when we do that, you just live a life of purpose all the way, and a lot of success as well.
Thank you so much. Sure, my cup is full. Thank you so much. And I know everyone else is just so grateful for your time. I was just skimming through all the questions and I'm like, oh my goodness, guys, I'm so sorry I couldn't get through all the questions, but I think it just goes to show, Ipeleng, just how many people's lives you've been touching and impacting in the session. My promise to everyone is that I will certainly have another session like this with Ipeleng again. I think it is imperative that, we learn from one another, especially people who've walked the path before us. Experience is certainly a teacher. And, we also need to prepare ourselves for the future. So thank you very much, Ipeleng. So I'd like to thank everyone else for taking the time to tune in today. It was certainly great to have every single one of you in the session. So again, I will be making this recording available to everybody on my social media platforms, as well as my website, which is www.secretstosuccess.co.za. And a big thank you to Maru Etsang, who also is a phenomenal guy that I lean on to, who is a business partner of mine, who is the guy behind the scenes, who sits quietly and just ensures that everything technically just goes well. So thank you, Mario, for your time as well. And again, Ipeleng, this is only the beginning. This is not goodbye. So thank you so much. I look forward to more engagements with you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. So wonderful connecting with you, Ole, and everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.